when I have had experiences before with people I would classify as fuckboys, we did spend a lot of time like in arguments.
Oh, that's interesting. I think maybe that was a nice guy.
I used to wear it like a badge of honor. So it became more important for me to be liked than it was for me to be authentic.
Who was just trying to be nice and make sure that his reputation doesn't get slanted by your experience with him.
What I've noticed from a lot of individuals, especially in your space, is that, it starts internal. It starts with looking at yourself and seeing a problem. And so in regards to the word a nice guy, how do you define a person as a nice guy?
Nice guy basically is a guy who doesn't believe he's just okay. He's okay just as he is. He believes he has to become what he thinks other people want him to be and hide anything about him that he thinks people might have a negative reaction to. This is based on something that's called toxic shame. And toxic shame is a belief, an emotional belief, deep in our emotional brain that says, I'm not okay. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And that gets internalized at a really early age. I mean, in infancy, before we can even think about things in the world. When we have painful or uncomfortable experiences as little children, we're narcissistic by nature, we're grandiose, and we think everything that happens to us, we caused. Whenever we have a painful experience, we believe we caused it, so therefore something's wrong with us. And that gets stored up in an emotional part of our brain called the amygdala, and the amygdala, which is deals with survival, is where our fight, flight, freeze mechanism comes from. That gets wired into every other part of our brain that says, okay, now what do I have to do to be liked and be loved and get my needs met? How do I get that person's approval? How do I avoid conflict with that person? How do I hide anything from them that they might not respond well to? And this becomes our paradigm, our roadmap for living life. And if you just imagine, if you just break it down, what kind of life are we going to live if every single moment we're either trying to get somebody's approval or avoid their disapproval? So what's happened for a lot of men is we've not been initiated into the masculine world that's challenging, that's scary. We've not had other men teach us how to go get comfortable being uncomfortable, how to relate to women, how to live with purpose and passion, how to get a job done. So a lot of men nowadays don't know how to deal with challenge, whether it's the challenge of a woman or a relationship or the challenge at work. They want to start their own business, but they never actually get it going, mainly because they, again, have not had that masculine initiation.
Is the F-boy really just scarred from their childhood and they don't know how to love as an adult?
I don't think it necessarily has to do with abandonment or childhood scarring. Yes, that plays a part in it, but I think it has to do with what was missing, like the father figure that had to place that imprint on it. It's really to do with the options. And if you don't have a strong enough male influence or good male influence to combat the options that you get at 13, 14, going on to like 18, it's almost inevitable that kid is going to be exercising those options biologically. And so I just think that it's not necessarily a scarring. It's just the influence that you don't have to combat what is happening in front of you.
And if anything, because you're not taught how to have relationships, to Craig's point, you just go for the easiest kind.
Yeah.
And it's easy because you, in essence, get everything that you want without doing any of the things that are challenging for you.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's everything that you want. It's everything that you think you want until you experience something that's really healthy and good in a partnership dynamic. You don't really have anything else to compare it to because you've been dealing with multiple women probably your whole life. At least I was.
I was in my early 30s, mid 30s, in my second marriage. My wife was unhappy all the time, seemingly angry all the time, never wanted to have sex anymore. And, I was doing everything I could think of to make her happy. I was a conflict avoider, so I hated the fights that she always seemed to want to have. And then, about 3 years into the marriage, she said to me, she said, I can't take you anymore. I said, what? You can't take me. You're the one that, you're the difficult one here. And she said, I can't take your passive aggressiveness. Well, and she said, I would rather be with an asshole because at least I know an asshole's going to treat me bad all the time. She said, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, and you treat me well, but then when I'm not expecting it, then you really hurt me. You cut me down, you embarrass me, you do things that are really hurtful. And she goes, you need to go get help. It was the perfect place for me to land because it was all men. It met like 6 o'clock in the morning, one morning a week. And for the first time in my life, like I said, I was in my 30s, and for the first time in my life, I just started revealing me, just talking about me, my dark side, my fears, my impulses, anything I had shame or guilt about. And the only reaction I got from these guys was, thank you for sharing, Robert. Nobody was offended, nobody was freaked out by anything. And I also started working with a therapist at that time. And I remember it was a woman therapist, and very first session, she got a string out and put it on the ground and taught me about boundaries, personal boundaries. And I quickly started learning about how to set boundaries, how to make my needs a priority, how to be honest. I just started finding out things about my whole nice guy paradigm of me trying to give to get and please and avoid conflict and hiding the truth if I thought it would upset anybody. I started realizing why those patterns weren't working well, and I even started getting an idea of some of the things my wife was talking about.
Why engage in a relationship with someone else that doesn't make them happy?
It's not that it doesn't make them happy. It's the fear of losing somebody that could potentially be better. So I think a lot of fuckboys, they go through this phase where they get a lot of attention from women. They're usually somebody who's very seductive. They're usually somebody who's attracting a lot of different women. So with that process, they know that there's always somebody else around the corner. And so they're just constantly holding you at an arm's length because of that thought pattern that there might be somebody better.
But isn't it also challenging because you have to, I would imagine as a fuckboy, you are in a lot of arguments.
Not necessarily, you would think that, but usually fuckboy would just ghost you. You try to argue with, sorry, but back in the day, if you try to argue with me, I'd just be like, oh, well, I'm just not gonna text back. I'm gonna text the other person. So I think people think that the fuckboy's going through a lot of turmoil, but I think that's just a process in your brain to help you cope through whatever you've been affected by this fuckboy. It's just being like, well, they must be going through argument. They must have a stressful life. But the reality is that it's not that stressful because they just cut everybody off. They might feel guilty.
This thing that I've said to people has become this crazy internet meme, but that's to clean up your room. And which is a lot better and more useful than people think. It's a lot harder too. But I learned this in part from Solzhenitsyn when he was trying to iron out his soul when he was in the Gulag, because he was trying to figure out how he got there, how he contributed to how he got there. And this is part of humility, is you have to look around you within your sphere of influence, like the direct sphere of influence, and fix the things that announce themselves as in need of repair. And those are often small things, and they can be like your room. Put it in order, because the thing is, it isn't exactly so important that your room is in order, although it is. What's important is that you learn how to distinguish between chaos and order, and to be able to act in a manner that produces order. What is it that I could do to set things more right today that I would actually do? And that makes you just incrementally stronger. And then the next day, you can maybe take on a slightly larger task. And you get the benefit of compound interest if you do that. It's a tremendously powerful technique. And I think if you do that, at some point, instead of just having to fix things up that are not good, you'll start to get a glimmer of the positive things that you could do that would actually constitute a vision.
You have to have a drive in you that's bigger than you for you to do what's needed to be done. It's not discipline, it's the desire that leads us astray. It's always the root that comes before the fruit. Same thing with weightlifting. It's always the struggle to push, the desire to get that weight up that brings the muscle. It's the desire to live and love living that makes you change your diet. It's the desire to give your wife what you feel inside about yourself, to express true love for her and not let it be hindered by the box of masculinity.
Zeus! 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 Zeus!
Pull in, punch all the way through. When you feel the pain, go all the way through. That could be a barrier in life or anything. Punch harder. Loose! Loose! You're not punching hard enough. Punch through it. You feel pain? Shake that off. Let's go. Loose! Loose! Zeus! Zeus! That's what this is about. Good. Let's get to that. Why are you crying? That's what this is about, son. It's okay to cry. We cry as men. It's part of the test for a reason. Why are you crying? Go ahead, son. Because what?
Because it is harder to push through with my left hand.
Okay, good. But you did it, though. You punched through with your left hand. You know in life there's going to be things harder for you to do than other things?
Yes, sir.
And you know those things that may appear to be hard to do, you're going to have to do as a man, regardless. And it's going to take tears. It's going to take the blood of Yeshua, Jesus, and your sweat to break through it. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So I don't mind you crying. I cry a lot too. You know what I'm saying? All right. So I want you to you're pulling your blow. I don't know if you're facing fear, or you're feeling that you may not make it. And we all face that from time to time. And when as soon as we hit resistance, we want to stop, right? Because it's hurting. We feel that pain. We're like, I'm not going through this no more, right?
Yes, sir.
We have to go off as men. It's going to be very painful. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
But you need to dig hard. Tell me what hard as you can.